It's very easy to write off TV licensed video games as bad or as cash grabs, and many of them are. But can you appreciate the good ones? In this video, you're going to learn about all the bidimensional Buffy video games. There are 4 of them. They're pretty weird though, so I bet you don't know about half of them. I'll tell you what's good or bad, why you shouldn't underestimate some stuff, and I'll even share with you some exclusive comment from the chat that I had with one of the developers. My name is Goatee_. I've streamed these games on my Twitch channel after having watched the entirety of the Buffy series, and I was extremely surprised by some of them. Both in a good and in a bad way, actually. If you're curious why I was watching Buffy in 2021, it's mostly because I liked Anthony Head as Uther Pendragon in Merlin, and I wanted to see more of him in Buffy. It was kind of a puerile nostalgia spin, but then we just kept watching it. Unsurprisingly, given the time, all but one of the 2D Buffy the Vampire Slayer video games are handheld titles. Later I'll tell you all about the more obscure and less accessible games that I'm sure you never heard of. For now, let's start with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a 2000 Game Boy Color release, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer Wrath of the Darkhul King, a 2003 Game Boy Advance release. So, you got a Western one by GameBrains and a Japanese one by none other than Natsume, a prolific developer house that you might know for their Super Nintendo titles like the Power Rangers game or Ninja Warriors. Maybe the Ghost Sweeper Mikami one that I love so much. I'll tell you right away that one of these 2 games is very good, while the other one is not worth anybody's time. Can you guess which is which? What I did was going straight for the Natsume one. The idea of Natsume dealing with an American IP like Buffy excited me. So I boot the game, and while it's missing the original show's theme song, this intro music just slays. The soundtrack is in fact by Kinuyo Yamashita, who also made music for, well, these. So I tried the controls and the combat system. Awesome! There's pairing, combos, and item mixing, which results in spot-on gags like a mop imbued with holy water. But it's not long before the disappointment sets in. The stages aren't anything to tell home about, and they all end with absolutely nothing going on.
Thank you for rescuing me. Here, take this throwing axe. It will help you. Save? You want to save?
You're then presented with low-effort digitized pictures of the main cast talking in the library, which would be fine if it wasn't the same pictures every time you finish one of these insignificant stages. There are 16 stages. There are only 4 bosses. What's worse is that before each of them there is a collectathon bonus level that just breaks what little atmosphere the game manages to create. Just putting them after the bosses instead of before them would have been much better. This video game is set in the 4th season of the show, which is where it takes a dip for the worst in my opinion. But there is a list of fights versus the gentleman.
What was that? What the?
Which is basically a mute episode in the show called Hush, and a great piece of work in general. The game is also very easy, which is to be expected, but I've never even died once, so that's too much. There is this pre-rendered mess when you finish it, which summarizes the GBA graphics trend that I'm not really a fan of. I just prefer pixel art, but if you don't mind this kind of sprites instead, let me know because I'm genuinely interested. So by now you'll be like, Goody, you're telling me the Natsume game was the bad one? You mean this was the good game all along?
Yeah.
And you haven't even heard about the other 2 very obscure Buffy games yet. Anyway, while Natsume probably had to rush their game out to THQ and wasn't very invested in the Buffyverse, GameBrains really poured all of their hearts into the Game Boy Color Buffy, as you will see later from the chat I had with the main developer. You don't want to dismiss this game after just looking at the screenshot or 2. Check out these animations. The soundtrack is also something I personally found very fitting and competent. It had me craving for more as I made my way through the decently paced linear stages. Linear stages are good. When you clear one of those, the cutscene screens are not only technically impressive, but also perfectly spot on. I can't stress this enough. If you're not too familiar with the show, this is exactly what the characters would say. But why is it so faithful? Because they tried. Hard. I reached out to Brett Bibby, who personally worked on over 30 video games and was the CEO of GameBrains from 1998 to 2012. I asked him a bit about the title and he had this to say. Buffy. That brings back memories. It was a fun game to make. We watched every episode of the series, read books, went deep into fan sites, and tried to build a story and game that the audience would like. The game didn't do as well as we had hoped, but we put our hearts and souls into making it. It had some pretty cutting-edge tech like high-color imagery in cutscenes, and the game was written using assembly language. Fun times! This was actually the first Buffy video game, and it's a fun one. The combat is pretty basic and fairly easy, like all of the games in this video actually. Still, there's good value in the qualities I've highlighted, which is hardly the case for the next game I'm going to tell you about. This one is a 2004 phone game, so the expectations have to be low for a game like this, but sometimes they are actually very good.
Most often they're not though, so I thought I would make that clear by introducing you to the title screen.
I mean, that's the notes though, right? It's just the cadence of it is wrong. Instead of being na 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 na, it's like na 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 na. Buffy the Vampire Slayer Quest for Oz, that's the name of this game. It was licensed to India Games by Fox. This developer had previously acquired the rights to The Day After Tomorrow and made a game out of that too. The premise of Quest for Oz is pretty generic and questionable. You have to get into a mansion in order to rescue Oz from Drusilla. Why would you do that? The pixel art is very nice, so I was actually very eager to try this. Unfortunately though, even platforming with clunky controls aside, the game lacks any kind of variety to keep you satisfied through the progression of the stages. There are 5 of them, and they all use the same tile set. There are only 4 different enemies. The vampires shoot fireballs, by the way. And a final boss, which is actually pretty fun and the most engaging bit of the game, as Drusilla, that's the final boss, she transforms into a pack of bats and then back into a form. That actually never happens in the show, with the exception of Dracula. I just remembered there's a Buffy episode with Dracula in it, and it's a pretty funny one too.
Anyway, given how obscure this game is, I figured you'd want to see the ending. Also, this was all live streamed on my Twitch channel. I would love to see you there sometimes. That's twitch.tv/goatee_.
Finally, there's this game with naked Jeff Goldblum on the cover art. Also, a Predator, an Alien, and Buffy. This is Sci-Fi Pinball by Fox Arcade, a collection of 4 unique tables. Don't ask me how Buffy fits in a sci-fi environment, but it is the main feature here. Video and audio clips from the show are featured in the Vampire Slayer's table, just like in the other 3. Right off the bat, you can see that the graphical design here is very questionable, but more so than that, notice how this table has 1,000,000 holes and no ramps? Yeah, that's not good. It's also very difficult to get the ball in those holes to just make the shots, which is why it took me a lot of effort to show you guys everything. Speaking of effort, if you find this interesting, I would appreciate if you clicked on the like button. It helps a lot. Anyway, as much as the physics are bad, there is no nudging feedback. It's still fun to try and achieve stuff in this Buffy pinball table. Look at the minigames, featuring wonky 3D models on the fake dot matrix display. This one with the kicks barely works, but I found it hilarious and it got me invested. There was even a Punch-Out clone.
Well, the Game Boy Color is the first Buffy video game. This one is the first game with Buffy in it. It came out in 1999. There was no full playthrough of this table online, so I gave it a serious effort. That way we got to see all of the modes, like various multi-balls, of course ultra jackpots,
Triple jackpot. Super jackpot. Ultra jackpot.
opening and closing the Hellmouth. We also completed all the goals, so I can tell you that nothing happened.
There you go. There you go. That we did it. We just beat the table. Nothing happened.
What does it take to make you people happy?
I've done a second loop of those two in the same run and nothing happens. I racked up a 6 score though, can you beat that?
Some guy actually made his own pinball table for Buffy with pretty good results too.
Now, remember when at the start of the video I made a cool effect and I said that there are 4 Buffy 2D games? I lied. There is a 5th one, here's a sneak peek. Leave a comment if you wanna see it in a video.
Let me know if you had any idea about these games. Ciao!